Have you ever wondered how some women manage to cheat and still look innocent doing it? The truth is, it's not luck, it's strategy. In today's breakdown, we're exposing the psychological tactics women use to cover their tracks, manipulate perception, and make you doubt your own instincts. By the end of this video, you'll recognize the patterns, the behaviors, and the red flags that most men miss, until it's too late. Let's get into it. One of the most subtle yet powerful tactics women use to get away with cheating is emotional distraction. It's not always about hiding the physical evidence. It's about controlling how you feel about them. When a woman senses that her partner might start noticing changes in her behavior, she doesn't rush to explain. She shifts the emotional tone of the relationship. Instead of addressing suspicion directly, she floods the space with affection, empathy, and concern, making him feel guilty for even thinking she could betray him. This works because men, by nature, are emotionally responsive to consistency. When a woman becomes unexpectedly caring, loving, or deeply interested in his life, he interprets it as a sign of closeness, not a cover-up. That's exactly what she wants. This form of emotional distraction manipulates perception. The sudden tenderness becomes a psychological smokescreen that clouds logic with comfort. It's not that she's more loving, it's that she's strategically steering his emotions away from doubt. A common way this plays out is through overcompensation. She might suddenly start cooking his favorite meals, checking in more often, or expressing appreciation for small things she used to overlook. The shift feels positive, so he relaxes. He stops paying attention to subtle inconsistencies, late replies, unavailability, or mood swings, because the emotional environment feels secure. When emotional needs are met, the brain's alert system quiets down. That's how suspicion dies before it even fully forms. Another layer of this tactic involves vulnerability. When a woman feels that her partner's intuition is kicking in, she may start opening up emotionally about unrelated issues, stress, anxiety, family pressure, or personal struggles. This isn't always manipulative by intention, but when used strategically, it serves as a diversion. It shifts his focus from her behavior to her emotions. Instead of wondering what she's hiding, he's now worried about what she's going through. The conversation moves from accountability to compassion, and that's where her control strengthens. Emotional distraction also works through timing. For example, if she senses tension or distance, she might initiate deep emotional conversations right before bed or during intimate moments, times when a man's guard is naturally lower. This timing ensures that logic takes a back seat to connection. The emotional high of vulnerability creates an illusion of trust. He walks away thinking the relationship is deepening, when in reality, it's being manipulated to protect her secret. The most deceptive part of emotional distraction is how it plays on a man's desire to be the protector. When a woman becomes emotionally expressive, sharing fears, insecurities, or even tears, she activates his instinct to defend her rather than question her. It's a psychological shift. He's no longer the detective, he's the comforter. Once he's in that role, it becomes uncomfortable for him to confront her about inconsistencies. The thought of hurting her or coming off as distrustful stops him from asking the questions he needs to ask. She may also use emotional contradictions to confuse him. For instance, being distant one day and overly affectionate the next. This inconsistency creates an emotional roller coaster that keeps him focused on fixing the relationship rather than analyzing her behavior. The emotional unpredictability becomes the new problem, and the potential cheating slips into the background. This psychological push and pull leaves him emotionally exhausted, too distracted to notice the real issue. Ultimately, emotional distraction isn't about deception alone. It's about emotional control. It's the ability to guide someone's feelings so effectively that their own intuition turns against them. The woman doesn't need to lie constantly or hide her actions perfectly. She just needs to make him feel like the connection between them is too strong, too real to question. Once that illusion is set, she can operate freely within it, knowing that his emotions have already been trained to dismiss his suspicions before they even surface. Social alibi building is one of the most effective and underrated strategies women use to conceal infidelity. Unlike direct lies that risk exposure, social alibis rely on credibility by association. A woman understands that people rarely question stories that involve trusted social circles. When she frames her time or absence around socially acceptable reasons, such as work, friends, or family, it becomes nearly impossible for her partner to challenge it without appearing insecure or controlling. The genius of this tactic lies in its simplicity. The more believable the context, the less likely anyone looks deeper. The process usually begins subtly. A woman might start mentioning certain names more frequently: a coworker she's collaborating with, a friend who needs support, or a cousin who's going through a tough time. These mentions serve a dual purpose. First, they introduce familiar reference points that will later back up her stories. Second, they normalize her spending time away from her partner in the company of those individuals. So when she eventually uses them as part of her alibi, it doesn't sound unusual or suspicious. It sounds routine, predictable, and therefore safe. Over time, she begins to strategically layer her stories. She might tell her partner she's having dinner with a friend, while that same friend is told she's visiting family. Neither side knows the full story, but both can unintentionally reinforce her narrative if questioned. This technique creates a web of partial truths, where everyone knows something, but no one knows everything. Even if her partner ever feels the urge to confirm her story, the people he asks will likely validate it without realizing they're part of her cover. That's what makes social alibi building so hard to expose. It thrives on fragmented truth. Another element of this strategy involves professional credibility. Work-related excuses are particularly powerful because they're hard to challenge. A woman might claim she's staying late at the office, attending a networking event, or going on a short business trip. In modern relationships, where independence and career commitment are encouraged, questioning such reasons can easily be twisted into a lack of trust. That's why this alibi works. It weaponizes the fear of appearing insecure. A man who values her career ambitions won't want to seem controlling by doubting her schedule, and she knows that. Social alibis can also involve mutual friends or social events. For instance, she might plan her outings around group settings where her presence is expected, but her actions within those settings are hard to monitor. She could attend a friend's party but conveniently arrive late or leave early, creating enough flexibility in her timeline to fit her real agenda. Even if her partner knows where she's supposed to be, the small gaps between plans offer enough room to maneuver. These small windows of untraceable time are where most affairs thrive. Some women also rely on trusted allies to strengthen their alibis. This could be a close friend who covers for her knowingly, someone who says, "Yeah, she was with me," if ever questioned. These allies become extensions of her deception, whether out of loyalty, fear of involvement, or shared secrecy. The more convincing the friend, the safer the cover becomes. And because women tend to build strong emotional bonds within their social groups, they often have people willing to defend them unquestioningly, even when they suspect something deeper. Digital communication adds another layer of sophistication to this behavior. She may share photos, stories, or updates from legitimate events that happened earlier, reusing them later as evidence of her current activity. Social media becomes part of the alibi. A single Instagram story of her having dinner with friends can erase any doubts about where she is, even if that post was pre-planned or from another night. Because visual proof carries emotional weight, her partner's brain instantly registers that as confirmation, reducing suspicion without her needing to say a word. At its core, social alibi building is about using trust as camouflage. It capitalizes on the social expectation that relationships require faith and privacy. The moment her partner starts to question too much, she can pivot to emotional defense, claiming he's being paranoid or disrespectful of her independence. This shifts the focus from her actions to his behavior, allowing her to maintain moral high ground while keeping her secret intact. The more secure he wants her to feel, the less he questions. And that's precisely the emotional leverage this strategy depends on. In today's world, where nearly every interaction leaves a digital footprint, one of the most sophisticated tactics women use to get away with cheating is digital cleanup. This isn't about deleting a few messages or hiding notifications. It's about mastering digital management to the point where suspicion never finds a trace to follow. Technology gives opportunities for connection, but it also provides the tools to control narratives, manage perceptions, and erase trails before they ever become evidence. The first layer of digital cleanup starts with notification control. Many women know that what gets seen first often shapes what gets believed. By managing notification settings, disabling message previews, muting specific chat threads, or using do not disturb modes during certain times, they prevent accidental exposure. A message that never pops up on the lock screen can't cause questions. Some even use separate messaging apps, archived chats, or encrypted platforms that offer disappearing messages. These tools create a sense of invisibility that feels safe and strategic. Then comes app management, a skillful form of digital compartmentalization. She may keep her phone looking perfectly normal, no suspicious apps, no hidden folders. But behind the surface, there's structure. For instance, she could use vault apps disguised as utilities, like a calculator or notes app, that store private photos or conversations. Even something as simple as clearing recent activity, browser history, or chat logs becomes part of a daily routine. To anyone else, her phone looks clean and organized. To her, it's a carefully maintained digital disguise. Another major element of digital cleanup is timing. Many women who cheat aren't reckless. They're calculated. They understand when it's safe to communicate and when it's not. Late-night messages might shift to work hours, when their partner expects them to be busy. Notifications might go silent during shared time, only to resume when privacy returns. This sense of rhythm helps build a consistent pattern of trust. When her partner notices that her phone never goes off at suspicious times, it reinforces the illusion that she has nothing to hide. In reality, that silence is intentional. It's part of the system. Social media plays a crucial role in this strategy. Platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, and WhatsApp have become digital extensions of relationships, but also the easiest places to get caught. That's why digital cleanup often includes image and activity control. She might untag herself from certain posts, adjust privacy settings, or limit who can comment or view her stories. Even something as simple as not posting for a while can be strategic, reducing digital noise that could expose inconsistencies. In some cases, she may even create a secondary or close friends account to manage selective visibility, allowing her to share parts of her life with specific people while keeping her partner in the dark. Another technique involves message redirection. Instead of deleting everything, she might move certain conversations to platforms that auto-delete or encrypt content. Apps like Signal, Telegram, and Snapchat make it easy to communicate without leaving permanent records. For her, this isn't paranoia, it's preparation. She knows that if messages disappear naturally, she doesn't have to take the risky step of manually deleting them later. This automation becomes her shield, a silent digital assistant that ensures no trail remains. Password management is another layer of digital cleanup. It's not uncommon for couples to share access to phones or social media accounts in the name of transparency, but she might subtly shift control by changing passwords under the pretense of security, forgetting to update her partner, or enabling two-factor authentication linked to her personal email. On the surface, it appears responsible, protecting privacy or data, but in reality, it's a move to reclaim digital control. Once she alone controls access, she also controls what gets seen and what doesn't. Even small habits reveal a strategic mindset. Keeping her phone face down during conversations, carrying it everywhere, or using privacy screens to block side views are all part of maintaining digital distance. These gestures are often dismissed as personal preferences, yet they're rooted in careful calculation. Every action, from when she checks her phone to how long she stays online, is designed to look normal while remaining meticulously controlled. Digital cleanup isn't just about hiding behavior, it's about engineering trust through invisibility. The goal isn't to delete every trace, but to create a digital environment where there are no questions to ask. By keeping everything spotless, predictable, and private, she ensures that her partner never feels the need to look deeper. Technology becomes her camouflage, and her precision turns potential exposure into perfect silence. Behavioral mirroring is one of the most psychologically advanced tactics women use to deflect suspicion and protect their secrets. It works on the principle of emotional balance. The more loving, caring, and attentive she appears, the less her partner feels the need to question her behavior. This strategy doesn't rely on hiding. It relies on performing consistency. When done effectively, it creates an illusion of stability that convinces her partner that everything in the relationship is perfectly fine. The core of behavioral mirroring lies in psychological compensation. A woman who knows she's crossing emotional or physical boundaries often overcompensates through affection and attentiveness. She might start giving more compliments, showing increased intimacy, or displaying unusual warmth. This shift in behavior is not accidental. It's a calculated attempt to overwrite any subtle changes her partner might have noticed. Humans naturally connect emotional expression with honesty, so when she becomes more loving, he perceives her as more genuine. This makes the deception not only believable but emotionally comforting. One of the most common patterns in this tactic is increased physical closeness. When guilt begins to surface, many women instinctively respond by drawing their partner in emotionally and physically. They might become more affectionate, initiate more hugs, or increase physical intimacy as a way of reinforcing connection. This creates a powerful distraction because physical touch releases oxytocin, the hormone that builds trust and attachment. As a result, her partner's brain associates that affection with security, making him far less likely to suspect anything beneath the surface. Behavioral mirroring also involves matching her partner's moods and routines to create an emotional reflection. She might start showing interest in his hobbies, asking more about his day, or showing sudden enthusiasm for shared plans. This alignment gives the impression of harmony and emotional investment. It's difficult to suspect betrayal when everything feels aligned and synchronized. The more she mirrors his emotional patterns, the more predictable and trustworthy she seems. And that predictability is what blinds him to potential deception. In many cases, this mirroring extends to communication styles. She may begin using the same language, tone, or phrases that her partner often uses when expressing affection. This creates a subconscious familiarity that feels genuine. For example, if he frequently says, "I appreciate you," she might start using that phrase more often to create emotional resonance. The more she sounds like him, the more emotionally bonded he feels. This linguistic reflection is subtle but powerful because it subconsciously tells him we're on the same wavelength. Another aspect of this strategy involves strategic vulnerability. When she senses emotional distance or suspicion, she might open up about her insecurities or fears, not necessarily to be understood, but to redirect emotional focus. She may confess minor flaws or admit to feeling guilty about not giving enough attention lately, which ironically earns her sympathy and resets trust. This controlled vulnerability humanizes her and shields her from deeper questioning. The moment she appears emotionally transparent, her partner's instinct to investigate fades away. Behavioral mirroring also functions as a guilt management mechanism. The more emotionally involved she appears, the easier it is for her to quiet her own sense of wrongdoing. Showing affection becomes her form of justification, a way to tell herself she still cares, that the relationship still means something. In doing so, she not only manipulates her partner's perception, but also stabilizes her internal conflict. The loving gestures aren't just for him, they're also for her conscience. This tactic is most effective because it operates in contrast to expectation. When a person is cheating, most partners expect signs of distance, coldness, irritability, detachment. But when a woman becomes more attentive instead, it flips the psychological script. Her partner becomes disarmed by kindness. Instead of looking for betrayal, he begins to feel grateful that the relationship seems to be improving. The irony is that this improvement is artificially constructed to keep him emotionally distracted from the underlying truth. Behavioral mirroring also has a preventive dimension. Even before suspicion arises, she might proactively create emotional memories that can be used later as emotional cover. She could plan romantic gestures, surprise gifts, or meaningful conversations to build a positive emotional track record. Then, if tension arises in the future, those gestures serve as reminders of her loyalty. Her partner recalls how loving she's been and questions his own doubt rather than her behavior. In that way, the past becomes her shield. Ultimately, behavioral mirroring turns affection into camouflage. Every touch, compliment, and act of care becomes part of a larger performance designed to maintain emotional equilibrium. It's not about deception through lies, but through emotional consistency so convincing that even the most observant partner finds no reason to question it. Controlled communication is one of the most strategic and disciplined techniques women use to protect their secrets and manage perception. It's not about avoiding contact, it's about controlling access. By deciding when, how, and under what conditions she can be reached, she gains the ability to dictate the flow of communication, which gives her full control over suspicion, explanations, and emotional tone. To her partner, this looks like healthy boundaries or a busy lifestyle, but underneath, it's a calculated structure designed to prevent exposure. The foundation of controlled communication lies in predictability. She creates consistent communication patterns that appear natural, so any deviation from them doesn't raise alarm. For example, she might text during specific hours, call at familiar times, or respond with predictable delays. Once her partner becomes accustomed to this rhythm, he stops questioning it. What feels like a normal schedule to him is actually a carefully timed system that ensures she has complete privacy during other parts of the day. By setting expectations early, she controls the narrative, and he unknowingly accepts her limits as the norm. Technology gives her the tools to execute this strategy flawlessly. She might manage message visibility by using features like read later, mark as unread, or muted notifications. Certain apps like WhatsApp or Instagram allow her to hide online activity, turn off read receipts, or use last seen settings strategically. These digital features become her shield. Even if she's online and communicating with someone else, her partner won't see signs of it. The illusion of absence becomes her protection, and the illusion of honesty comes from the consistency of her explanations. A key element of controlled communication is selective availability. She learns when to be responsive and when to be unreachable, but she always has a logical reason ready. Work meetings, gym sessions, family time, or needing a break from the phone are all believable justifications. These explanations sound responsible and self-aware, making it difficult for her partner to interpret them as avoidance. Over time, he becomes conditioned to view her silence as normal rather than suspicious. This conditioning gives her freedom. She can communicate with whoever she wants during those windows without triggering doubt. Another layer involves emotional framing. She might subtly train her partner to view constant communication as a form of insecurity. By emphasizing that she values independence and personal space, she reframes the conversation from transparency to trust. If he ever questions why she's unavailable or slow to respond, she can turn the situation around, suggesting he's being clingy or over-anxious. This psychological reversal makes him hesitant to bring it up again, effectively silencing future doubts. The more confident she appears about her boundaries, the more secure he feels about giving her space. Controlled communication also involves message management. She may use disappearing messages, delete conversations, or move them to secondary apps where her partner wouldn't think to look. In some cases, she'll even keep communication purely verbal, avoiding text or social media altogether when she needs to maintain secrecy. Phone calls, especially through apps that don't log activity, become the safest method. When there's no written evidence, there's nothing to find later. Each decision she makes about communication channels is calculated to minimize the chance of digital traces or emotional slips. Timing plays a crucial role in this tactic. She's aware of when her partner is busy, distracted, or occupied. Those are the moments she uses for risky communication. For example, she might reply to certain messages while he's at work, asleep, or out with friends. Her timing ensures that even if he wanted to check or question her, he wouldn't be present to notice. This temporal control creates invisible barriers between her private and shared life, giving her total autonomy without confrontation. Social perception adds another layer of protection. In an age where being constantly online is normal, she can blend her communication behavior into the background noise of digital life. If questioned, she can easily claim she was scrolling through social media, responding to a friend, or watching videos. These explanations are believable because they're typical. The ordinary nature of her actions hides extraordinary precision. Every message, every reply, every silence is deliberate, yet it all appears effortless. At its core, controlled communication is not about avoiding her partner. It's about controlling the narrative of availability. By choosing when to engage and when to withdraw, she maintains emotional dominance and operational safety. Her partner feels respected and trusted, believing she's simply managing her time or protecting her peace. In reality, that distance is her firewall, a self-designed system of boundaries that keeps her private life completely out of reach. Reverse accusation is one of the most manipulative and psychologically disarming tactics women use to deflect suspicion and regain control when their partner begins to question them. It's not about proving innocence, it's about flipping the emotional script. Instead of defending their actions directly, they shift the focus onto their partner's behavior, making him feel like he's the problem. This tactic doesn't just silence confrontation, it rewires the emotional dynamic of the relationship, making him hesitant to raise the same concerns again. The foundation of reverse accusation lies in emotional deflection. When a woman senses that her partner is beginning to notice inconsistencies, changes in her routine, unusual secrecy, or emotional distance, she doesn't respond with explanation or denial right away. Instead, she goes on the offensive by accusing him of being too insecure, too suspicious, or too controlling. She forces him into a defensive position. Suddenly, he's the one trying to justify his feelings rather than her explaining her behavior. This quick emotional reversal shifts the balance of power completely. This tactic works because it plays on a man's natural desire to appear rational and emotionally stable. No one wants to be seen as paranoid or jealous, especially in a relationship where trust is emphasized. So when she labels his concerns as signs of insecurity, he immediately begins to self-analyze rather than investigate her actions. That self-doubt is the emotional leverage she counts on. The more he questions his own instincts, the safer she becomes. The issue of potential cheating dissolves into a discussion about his trust issues, and the original concern gets buried under layers of emotional guilt. Reverse accusation often appears in subtle, emotionally charged conversations. For instance, if he asks a simple question like, "Why were you so hard to reach yesterday?" she might respond with, "Why are you always doubting me?" Or, "Do you really not trust me at all?" These questions sound defensive, but emotionally powerful. They don't answer his inquiry, they redirect it. The focus moves from her behavior to his supposed lack of faith. It's a conversational trap, one that turns legitimate curiosity into an accusation of emotional weakness. The brilliance of this tactic lies in its ability to use emotion as a shield. When she reacts strongly, showing hurt, frustration, or even tears, she creates emotional pressure that makes confrontation uncomfortable. Her partner, now feeling guilty for hurting her feelings, often backs off, trying to comfort her instead of pressing for answers. The more emotionally expressive she becomes, the faster the dynamic changes. She's no longer the one being questioned, she's now the one who feels attacked. This emotional role reversal keeps her protected behind a wall of sympathy and empathy. Another layer of reverse accusation involves moral positioning. She might frame her partner's suspicion as a violation of respect or trust, saying things like, "I thought you believed in me," or "You're making this relationship toxic with your doubts." These statements carry moral weight because they imply that his questioning is not just irrational, but unethical. By framing herself as the emotionally mature and trustworthy one, she forces him into the role of the insecure partner who's jeopardizing the relationship. This moral contrast makes him hesitant to bring up any concerns again, fearing it might make him look small or controlling. Reverse accusation is also reinforced through psychological conditioning. Each time her partner expresses doubt and she punishes it with emotional backlash, he learns to suppress his instincts. Over time, he associates suspicion with conflict, emotional guilt, and rejection. Eventually, he stops questioning her altogether, not because he trusts her more, but because the emotional cost of doing so feels too high. This gradual conditioning creates emotional compliance, a dynamic where silence feels safer than confrontation. In more complex situations, she may even use his past behavior against him to justify her reaction. For example, if he's ever been jealous or insecure before, she can use those moments as ammunition. "You've always been like this," or "You're overreacting again." This framing makes his current suspicions seem like a continuation of an old pattern rather than a response to real changes in her behavior. By rewriting history, she anchors her defense in familiarity, which strengthens its credibility. At its deepest level, reverse accusation works because it manipulates emotional perception and control. Instead of focusing on facts, it pulls the entire discussion into the realm of feelings, where logic loses ground and emotional guilt takes over. Her partner begins to question his own perception of reality, wondering if he's being unfair, too sensitive, or even toxic. By the time he doubts himself completely, she's already restored her image as the misunderstood, emotionally wounded partner. The conversation ends not with answers, but with his apology.